Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emily Sophia, and I am going to be walking you through, albeit in a state of complete and total emotional incapacitation, I will be walking you through the latest of Bates Motel. So lean on me, I'll lean on you, because I pretty much can't stand on my own in any sense. I'm in my therapy blanket right now, okay? I've got Spider-Man, I've got the Avengers, I've got Wolverine and Thor and Iron Man, and because that's the kind of help that I need, you know. When you need a friend, don't look to a stranger. And if you have a freaking superhero blanket, you bust it out for nights like these. So spoiler alert before we get into things, as I will be bearing all in this review, and I'm too hot for this blanket, but I don't want to not have the blanket because I'm really upset. Like, okay, legitimately, here, I'm just going to be completely cocooned from the waist down. That'll do for me. Just some kind of something to keep me intact, because no, never do that to me again. Annie, Bates Motel, this third season business, I don't know what you're all about, but I can't handle this. I can't keep going this way. I was like, I surprised myself with my own emotional volcanicness. I mean, there is no time to evacuate everyone in the premises. I don't know how I managed to swallow up my own lava, but I was just exploding. That scene when I completely lost my mind at the scene when Norma ran out after George's car after rightfully telling him off. I mean, in no universe was that going to work out, and in no universe is he a nice guy. Yeah, nice guys finish last. Sure, this guy was never a nice dude to begin with, and as Norma so tactfully pointed out, he comes from a world of fake people who wear their nice coats and sip their martinis up in the mansion and judge everyone below them. And truer words have never been spoken, so I mean, praise the Lord in heaven for that moment. But seriously, that was just like, I was just devastated with the way that, because in the process of telling him off and getting this guy off of her case, she was essentially leaving herself alone. As far as Norma knew in that moment, she's completely and utterly abandoned. She doesn't have Dylan, she doesn't have Norman, she doesn't have Alex Romero, because she can't tell him what's going on because of what Nick Ford told her. And she legitimately, and then she also let Emma go, because she's in this process where she is cutting and severing every possible tie that she can in order to make sure that she can get Norman back to her. But in that process, she can't, the end isn't in sight. And she's just leaving herself alone. And so when she's running out and chasing that car, which is the last thing that we want her to do, and, you know, running after Dick Weasel, but for her, for Norma, that is the last semblance of any kind of companionship. And this guy wasn't even capable of loving her. And just the tragedy of that moment made like a friggin' hurricane of bullets right into my pincushion of a heart, and they landed true, each and every one. And when Emma, so ridiculously grateful that she hung out in her car and decided to wait that moment out before she took off, because I mean, she had every reason to leave as well. She wants to help, and she is completely and totally incapacitated too. Both her and Norma were able to, in that moment, bond in their state of isolation, one which the Bates family essentially caused for Emma, and one which has been inflicted on Norma, and yet she's also caused for herself. It's complicated. I could go very deeply into each and every character interaction and just the freaking butterfly effect that we saw in this episode. But just as they embraced one another and as Emma is throwing herself back into the Bates lives, because finally she has that moment of transparency, that honesty, that just the thread of truth that she needed to keep her around, to know that she could be a part of something and make a difference, and she was able to make a difference in that moment. I don't think that Emma could let herself leave because she knew that she needed to be there. She knew deep down in her heart that there is this incredibly traumatic calamity under the floorboards of the situation. And Emma is just the kind of girl who would do anything to be able to alleviate that, to speak into this dark place, and she doesn't even know the full nature of it. And she gets that opportunity, and I was just like, I wept for, it was like 12 seconds, 12-second complete and utter breakdown. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't pull me together again, but somehow I was back in the system. That was the one good thing in this episode that occurred, is that we still have Emma, because when Norma just sort of clams right back up, and she is so scarily and tragically good at faking it, and yet everyone can tell, because these 180 turns that Norma does, where she will be in, you know, her eyes are perpetually this wide, complete and total saucers, and then the Arctic blue ice just, you know, blades into your soul. And so she has this expression, her eyes are radiating this truth and just blasting it into everyone that she makes eye contact with. And then her mouth and her body language and the way that she moves, everything is so controlled, except, of course, those windows into the soul. And so she has to put on this act for Emma, and I don't think that ultimately it comes down to getting Norman back. And it's this whole vulnerability crisis that Norma struggles with in her day-to-day life anyway, compounded by the fact that this madman has her son, and all she can do is sacrifice every person around her. And as long as it is just her and him, and there is nothing but the cord between Norman and Norma's hearts, as long as there is just that line, like can to can, and that makeshift telephone, you know? But wow, my lights just went out. That's really, how fantastic is this? I need the creepier ambiance of things, don't I? We'll see very soon how many Emilys it will take to change a light bulb. But anyways, so I ramble so much about Emma because I care so much about her, and I'm so glad that the last few episodes have made me care about her, because I was afraid that her character was going to slip into the pointlessness and the oblivion with earlier episodes and what was happening with Cody, but she is back in the picture for better or for worse. Ultimately, we want her to stay as far away from the Bates family as possible, because it's just a bad idea to stay around, but she has found a family, for better or for worse. I do trust that it will be for worse, but I don't want to lose Emma yet. I just can't. Dylan's kind of an idiot. I don't fully know what his thought process has been throughout this season, or if he has been doing everything to muffle the voice of reason. I really feel like there needs to be kind of like an angel devil shoulder action, something to kind of personify what's going on in his brain. Because the fact that he seems so ridiculously hesitant about killing this guy who is clearly a scumbag and clearly a gargantuan problem, and he is pussyfooting his little way all around that, when his brother's life is on the line. And of course, at the very end, he confronts Nick Ford and he tries to play things off all cool. And I mean, it seems like he's legitimately going for trying to get some backup. He knows that there is a serious problem between Zane and Jody, and, you know, they're all trying to bring it back to Nick Ford, so he's kind of trying to act the agent between both sides, and ultimately that is the bloody compromise that is inflicted. He tries to get out of Nick Ford where his brother is at the last second, but he just decides to pretty much beat it, because dead men tell no tales. I dare say I shall not miss that man, and he won't be living to tell anybody about how he got his scars, so let us be grateful for that. Anyway, so we know that Norman is going to be freed, but it's the aftermath of that situation. You know, it's interesting, the cliffhanger that they chose to leave things off on, because right afterwards they have the promo for next week. We know that he's going to be free, obviously, but what's going on from here on out is breaking down exactly what Norman's relationship with Mother is, and what he's going to do now with the knowledge that he has about himself. And it's interesting the way that they use this whole Weed Wars plotline, and the way that Norman was pretty much taken in for ransom. You know, so he's trapped underground in complete isolation, covered in dirt in his own blood from trying to beat his way out, and covered in grubs and earth and water just flowing over him. And then it is in that tight space where he can't move, where he is completely and utterly paralyzed, where he's forced to come to grips with what he has done. And of course, before that final scene that we see where he realizes exactly who he is, albeit through a very blurry and surreal kind of dream sequence of sorts, before that he has this comforting image of his mother, of Norma, the golden light cascading through, and there she is just in the periphery, as if she's reaching out around the camera to Norman's shoulder, we assume, to comfort him, to tell him that there's nothing to worry about. Everyone has their mother inside of them, and that he need only think of her, or call her name, or whatever the lines are that she says completely. Oh, hey, my light's back on. How about that? Gosh, freaking dang it. I feel like my night is turning into a horror film. Right behind me. That is just something else. Anyways, so he has that moment, this split where there is Norma, where it's not necessarily the mother persona, but it's almost this angel descending to him, to raise him from his grievous plight. But then later on, as he continues to be stuck in this place of crisis, and of course it's after he tried to make his escape in the first place, and after he lost the pearls and the picture of Miss Watson, I think that was kind of an impetus too in what he discovers about himself, and that kind of provided some further context. So now he is back in isolation. He is back essentially trapped with himself, with his reality, and with his darkest dreams. Where else do they have to go? He has no one to talk to. He has no semblance of a life, no facade that he can use to stall or to delay this discovery of who he is becoming. And then we enter into this really creepy, surreal dream sequence, which, okay, so we know we have the DNA evidence, not physically owning it, I should hope, that Norman did the deed with Miss Watson. But of course, what's been racking our brains has been the context of that whole scenario, how it went down. Was he directly seduced? Did he coerce her? And so what we had was, it was this sort of mirror image. It was this dual split between the Norman who we saw at the end of season 1, who is speaking with Mother, with Norma, who is wearing her pious and chaste, not high-waisted, high-necked dress, high collar, that's the word that I'm looking for, and she has her hair pulled back so tightly, and she is breaking down for Norman exactly what it is that Miss Watson is setting out to do in inviting Norman over to her house, and in these circumstances, and with her door open and the changing of outfits, just to give him that glimpse of what she wants. So there's the split self, where Norman is with Mother, so there is that side of his personality. And then the image switches over to the view that we didn't have in that finale from the last season, where he is engaged in these sexual acts with Miss Watson, and it's all very surreal, and the variety of camera angles that we have, of course, seem to make things abstract, as if Norman himself is trying to put things together. He can see from so many different perspectives this one event. You know, that's what's crazy about it all, and I definitely want to watch this episode again to try and drink in every detail, but because it seems like he's looking back, the Norman who is there on the bed with Miss Watson is looking back at the Norman who is with Mother, and so it seems that the Norman who is having sex is this third personality that Norman has, the one who wants to sexually dominate, the one who has this appetite that seems to galvanize his Mother persona. Again, it's the two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. They are one in the same, and they are constantly reversing. So we're going on this kind of turnstile between the two sides of himself, is what that seems to be. And so the question is, was it Mother who killed her? Or was it this other Norman, you know, this other side? And there's so many ways to break it down, and I want to watch that scene more, because there's several different Normans that we kind of have to work our way through. But they ultimately all find their home in one very sorry gentleman who, upon his release from his prison, I'm afraid that he is going to go try and commit suicide in this next episode. I'm almost sure that that's what he's doing when he's out in the woods, when he tells Norma that he didn't mean to hurt her, but that there is no one who can stop him from doing this. So, and then of course, now Norma knows. She knows with certainty what Norman has done. Although his absence in that situation and her desperation for him, and the phone call that she makes after what Romero tells her, she tells Norman on the phone in her voicemail that she loves him more than life itself, than anything on earth or in heaven, and just pours forth this side of herself. So we don't get to see that rage that we had anticipated. And so the emotional conflictions upon his return are going to be brilliant and breathtaking to watch unfold next week. That's for sure. Because Norma is of this one-track mind at this point, where there is nothing that can stop her from getting to Norman. Even the discovery that he has had this illicit sexual encounter around about the time of a murder. Kind of in the ballpark in the neighborhood, so there's that situation. But ultimately what it comes down to is just having Norman near her. Because it seems to me that she believes that having Norman in her company purifies him and purifies them, the two of them. And there's just so much to account for what happened with George, and then so where are the pearls in the picture at this point, and what's going to happen with Romero once he gets Norman to take the polygraph test? What's that going to lead to? Is that just trying to clear Romero's own conscience? Where exactly are we going to go? There's so many different places, so I would love to hear your thoughts, especially about the dream sequence, the emergence of Norman's truth. And also I found very fascinating, and I looked this up. Hopefully I still have it up on my phone, so so that way I can read it for you. But there was a quote from the Meet John Doe movie that Norman was reciting to himself when he was in the underground prison. So let me see if I can find the quote here on my phone, because I actually pulled it up. Because I was trying to break that down as well, because I think that basically, as you know, as he's talking, as he says, I'm going to talk about us, the average guys, the John Does. If anybody should ask you what the average John Doe is like, you couldn't tell him, because he's a million and one things. He's Mr. Big and Mr. Small. He's simple and he's wise. He's inherently honest, but he's got a streak of larceny in his heart. He seldom walks up to a public telephone without shoving his finger into the slot to see if somebody left a nickel there. So think about that in the context of Norman and of who he's becoming, you know. So I'm trying to think of what was the favorite movie that he and Norma had talked about, because I don't know if this was from that movie or if this is something different. But I love that Norman has this appreciation and love for older films, and that he kind of, despite the modern setting of the story, that he still has those traces of something that's old and nostalgic and noir and very creepy and sinister all at once. It's just, yeah, that was really a fantastically creepy moment that we got to experience there with that quote too. So despite the fact that Norman was pretty much kept in one place this entire episode, his development was kind of sort of off the charts. And then we got to see so much going on for Norma as well, and that was the true epicenter of my heartbreak tonight, was having to watch Norma try to fend off her demons, her worst nightmare of losing Norman by cutting ties with everyone around her. And I cannot tell you the fire in my heart that was ablazing as she revealed to Romero that Norman was really gone. And I dare say that the expressionless mask, I could see a crease of concern, which I thought was enough to warrant a passionate embrace, but we don't get that yet because we have to work for it. We as the audience have to play it nice, I guess, or something. But so but just some incredible moments for her. I'm glad that Emma's in the picture. I'm glad that George is out and Nick is out. And so now, as far as where this leaves the weed war, we're going to see, although I feel that is going to take, I feel like that's going to kind of fall to the back burner as Norman returns and his psyche is broken down and broken into. And Norma tries to stave off the truth and does anything that she can to place everything back precisely where it was before. Whatever the cost, she knows the truth, and yet here she is about to thwart it with every weapon that she has got in her arsenal, and we know that Norma has many. So I really want to see Dylan become integral in the lives of his family again. But he's just been in such a strange place. And yet this whole incident with Norma's getting involved with Nick Ford, and then his being involved with Nick Ford through his line of work, the way that has brought them back together, I really hope that that's going to make for something meaningful later on. I hear that Caleb is actually due to return, and we see in the preview for the next episode, the finale, ladies and gents, do not forget that, that Norman tells Emma about Norma's being raped by her brother when she was young. And so I think that, you know, that's going to provide some understanding for Emma as to why Norma is so quick to shut everyone out, that she can let the entire world in on this complete state of turmoil and then shut it off, and then pretend as if she has to invent some excuse for being upset or for appearing upset, you know. So the question is Caleb going to be returning this time around? I mean, we've got plenty of events to keep us busy for next week, and I don't know how they're going to shove all this everything into like a 45-minute time slot. Can we just snip the commercials out? I won't tell anybody. I promise. I promise. I don't know. My balls have been thoroughly busted by this episode, and my eyes, I dare say, are not dry yet. But, yowzas. This season has hit like nobody's business. Hats off to Vera Farmiga in everything that she does. She is this vicious warrior for truth, and she bleeds these moments of intense sincerity, and then she tries to pick everything back up again or to maintain that sense of self-control. And to witness that, to see that I see parts of her in myself, creepily enough. Certain parts also not, but man, so what do you guys think? What exactly is wrong with Norman Bates? And which side of himself was it? Who committed the murder act? Was it Mother's response to this other side of Norman, who was enjoying and taking advantage of being taken advantage of, who has this power? And then there's the side of Norman who is listening to the mother inside of him, and just so many intricacies. I want to break it down with you guys, because if I go any further into it, I will combust, and I don't want to do that. Not before the finale. Afterwards, we'll see about that. We will all get together for a collective combustion, and then we'll try to collect our particles so that we can have our particles watch the season 3 premiere and go from there. And we'll see what happens. Maybe our particles will be more emotionally capable of handling this show, as opposed to being in our corporeal forms. I'm trying so hard. Words are not happening anymore. Heavens to Betsy. I'm gonna take off before this gets any weirder than it already is. So if your heart is broken, just remember that Psycho is a thing, and that's ultimately where all this is going. So smile until the world ends. That's where we're headed. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Check out my review from last week as well if you missed that, if you are new to the business. I hope you like it. So you guys take care, fill in the blanks that I inevitably left, and I will be back before you know it.